Ah, the great outdoors, experienced in the best possible way, fictionally. But that's not the opinion I'm pitching you guys this time, even though it is correct, and cavemen invented the indoors for a very good reason. No sir, I'm here to talk about art. I'm sorry. You ever been to an art gallery and seen something and thought, a little kid could draw this? Why is it $2 million? Why is this special? Or seen like a public art installation or structure of some sort and thought, this is a huge waste of taxpayer money? Why is this here? This is dumb. Or watched the Super Mario Brothers movie and thought, this is nothing like the games. Why would anybody, especially someone really attractive and funny, find any redeeming qualities in it?
I'll kill that plumber!
That's where art interpretation comes in, baby, and I gotta pitch it as one of the best things about being alive and able to experience video games. They're not just for playing, they're also for thinking. Anyway, this video is about Firewatch. Should I even be talking about this? So, did you already type the comment, this is not a hot take? Delete it, fool! You haven't heard the hot take yet. You haven't made it 2 minutes into the video, you ass! I know what you're thinking, though. How can any take about Firewatch be a hot one in the year of our Waluigi 2021? This is a game from 2016 that we're all probably tired of hearing about. Well, sometimes Takeout is better reheated the next day, or in this case, like 5 years later, but I like to think that the opinion I'm pitching you here about this game is different and interesting enough that you won't be mad at me, so holster your typing fingers until I tell you what's actually going on here. So the cold take here is that Firewatch's ending is good, and it's purposefully unfulfilling to make a point about the narrative. Henry's gotta face his real problems. But you've heard that one before, right? I want to expand on that idea. This is kind of like a yes and sort of situation. So, the hot takeout is this. Yes, the ending is great, and I personally interpret it to also be making a point about how we consume games as escapist entertainment. So this is all wrapped up in that fun art versus product argument that's been plaguing gaming for decades. Oh god, I'm making a huge mistake trying to tackle this subject. Hoo-hoo! Country roads take me home. To begin with, I gotta prove that yes, there was backlash to Firewatch, because there's already been comments like, what? But yep, there was a bit of drama surrounding this game, and trust me, I know it was a small number of people that were big mad. I'm not saying that this was a huge deal in and of itself, because there's always backlash to games for basically any reason. But the backlash to Firewatch was specifically interesting to me because I'm just fascinated by the psychology of the folks in the camp that did have a hugely negative reaction to what is essentially a pretty inoffensive and lovely game. I guess I gotta sum up Firewatch then, don't I? Okay, here we go! Henry, a dude whose wife is suffering from early onset dementia, can't emotionally deal with that tragedy, and basically fucks off to become a Firewatch guy in the woods. It's gorgeous. He chats with his sexy sounding boss Delilah.
Yep, that's me. Bye.
You walk around some woods, a bit of intrigue happens.
There's some guy out here.
Some guy? Wait, he's looking at you? Is he doing anything else?
I don't think so.
Henry, there's something someone should have told you about this area.
What is it?
It's outside.
Come on.
The whole thing. And people come and go as they please. It's madness.
Yeah, okay. I get it.
You get way closer to your boss in a pretty sexy way.
I wish I was over there.
I wish you were too.
We could sit outside. We could talk without these radios. We could,
That's inappropriate. But then a lot of intrigue happens, and you investigate it all, and it starts looking even more mysterious and intriguing. Like creepy sci-fi government conspiracy type intrigue.
It looks like they've been following me around. What I do when I'm out hiking? Jesus.
Henry, do you hear me?
It says that you and your boyfriend are still together.
What? How do they even know who he is? How the hell does this... I'm so sick of letting these people do this to us. We should just burn the place down.
So it looks like things are about to get really interesting, but it doesn't. It just stops. Everything just stops. Turns out there wasn't a government conspiracy, but another Firewatcher was gaslighting Henry and Delilah very effectively, so that they were jumping at shadows and interpreting everything in a hyper-paranoid way. The forest is then consumed by fire, which you should have been watching for. You had one job.
Wow. The forest could never burn down on your watch.
And Henry is picked up by a helicopter with the prompt, "Go home." You don't ever meet Delilah face to face. The forest is destroyed. The credits roll. What a bummer ending. Huge cop-out, am I right? Firewatch was a hit with critics and a refreshing new thing for the majority of its players, but on the other hand, there was a tiny but spicy demand for refunds, which called into question Steam's refund policy, which offers players refunds for any reason so long as the request is made within 14 days of purchase and the game was played for less than 2 hours. And if you're really zooming through it, you can beat Firewatch in just a little under that time. Which to me is the equivalent of sprinting through a museum and being mad that even though you liked what you saw whooshing past you, you just paid $20 to get in the door and therefore the building should have been physically larger and take longer to run through. But whatever. What I want to make super clear here is that I don't think people are obligated to like Firewatch. It is super duper okay to not like things. But this situation didn't really feel like a normal people don't like game thing. There's an interesting conversation to be had about the niche backlash to this game and where that anger may have come from. So when I first played Firewatch, it was after having already heard that the ending was, let's say, contentious. So I was fully mentally prepared for an ending that was unsatisfying bullshit, judging by the reaction of the Refund crew. And here's me from 2016's take on that. That was nice, but yeah, the ending is a little disappointing. It just kind of didn't, I don't know, wasn't fulfilling emotionally. Oh, I thought it was good. I don't see why people would want a refund for it. It wasn't that bad. Like, oh my god, it was disappointing, but it wasn't like, oh my god, this is trash. What a mockery of a video game and a story, and what a waste of my time, or any, like, oh my god, I expect it to be like, so much more worse, like cataclysmically, game-ruiningly bad ending. It's not even close to bad enough to have that reaction. Like, holy shit. Yes, it was lackluster, but how many movies have I watched that have had lackluster endings? I don't ask for refunds for the movies. Like, it's just like, well, that was a shame. Oh well, let's go get dinner or something and talk about how they could have done that better or something, you know? Okay, so I didn't like the ending either, but it didn't ruin the experience for me. I still enjoyed my time with the game overall, and in the years since, I've thought more about the ending, and I've come around to liking it the more I've thought about it. Wow, I can't believe I have signal out here, what? I mean, to begin with, I love bummer endings in games. Like, some of my favorite games that have really stuck with me have had those types of endings, and those are all highly reviewed games, don't get me wrong. But the one that sticks out as having the most backlash to the ending is far and away Firewatch. And it's not just because the ending is depressing, it's because the ending is unsatisfying. That's a big difference right there. When a game has an unsatisfying ending, a certain feeling consistently crops up in the bad reviews about it. Betrayal. Naturally, most media consumers feel they're owed a satisfying ending for the time spent consuming the media. It's why the theatrical release of Little Shop of Horrors ends like this instead of ending in an extremely badass musical kaiju apocalypse that the plot and its characters deserved, and goddammit, I hate test audiences sometimes. Enemies of art! But anyway, If games are not art, then they are products to be consumed. And consumers, of course, understandably, demand satisfaction. The time versus price thing is a huge sticking point for a certain subset of gamers, so to have an unsatisfying ending is a pretty big consumer crime to those folks. With Mass Effect 3, which is even more notorious for its terrible endings and had a way bigger backlash than Firewatch did, it's time wasted, because the game is a reasonable price at $60, but it lasts at least 24 hours, so the price to time ratio is about $2.50 an hour. And, it's also the third in a series, so it's even more precious time wasted than that. And with Firewatch, it's more about the money wasted, because the game was $20 and was declared to be too short by this particular demographic, since it lasts about 3 or 4 hours. So the price to time ratio is double that from Mass Effect 3.
Do I buy into this rationale? I gotta say no. I shudder to think that human beings are like media-consuming machines that are only capable of emotion when the media reaches some sort of arbitrary statistical measurement of time versus money spent. Like, ew, icky, that's icky. Icky to think and say about people, and also math is icky. As much as the algorithm thinks they should be, people aren't math. Or at least they shouldn't be math. I'd like to not be math.
So, gamers are not historically one to plainly admit or examine their feelings, but really it's their emotional investment that was wasted. They feel toyed with, trolled, discarded, bait and switched, and insulted by an unsatisfying ending.
And I get it, like, no shade intended here. You're totally allowed to want that in your media, especially if it's narratively based. Closure and catharsis can be incredibly important to that narrative, right? You're not dumb for wanting that catharsis. Part of the escapism is having that kind of closure.
So why did the Firewatch devs deny us that closure and make this purposefully unsatisfying ending? It wasn't an accident. They knew it was disappointing.
I'm not mad. I'm just...
You're not mad, you're just disappointed?
I've seen people recount the story of Firewatch while barely mentioning Henry's sick wife, Julia. I don't know, I guess it's because a lot of players probably see her as like an inciting incident type trope, and it only functions to get Henry out into the Firewatch tower to start his wacky adventure. I don't know, whatever. But she's not that. She's the emotional crux of the whole narrative. Not just the reason Henry's out there, but also the reason he kind of falls in love with Delilah. And also the reason he falls for the conspiracy plot very easily. Even though the player might only see Julia as a fridged wife to get the plot rolling, except she's alive, she is actively the thing that Henry is desperately trying to avoid thinking about, and what makes him so susceptible to the events of the game. He wants a distraction from his depression and guilt, and even a scary conspiracy is way more preferable to thinking about than how his wife is losing her mind and there's nothing he can do about it. And in fact, he just ran away from it.
She's sick, and I shouldn't be here, but I am.
I'm sorry, Henry. What is it?
We'll get into it.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, you are here, and it's beautiful, and escaping isn't always something bad.
And yes, I do believe the end of the game is saying there's no escape here. Henry can't run away from his problems like that. Real life doesn't have those escapes, so this story is not going to end fantastically like you're hoping it will.
But I'm taking it one step more meta and applying it to games consumerism in general, which is probably not very advisable.
A lot of angry reviews on games like this that aren't considered, traditionally fun, often imply the idea of, I play games to escape, not do this. Because they'll often offer how the game could have been improved if it went in a more fantastical, less bummer direction. Gone Home should have been actually paranormal and scary. That would have made the game good. Depression Quest should have more options for a healthy conclusion. That would have made the game good. Firewatch should have actually had a cool government surveillance plot for the intrepid Firewatchers to tackle. That would have made the game good. Clearly, the developers of all these games have made a mistake, an accident of some sort, in not doing these things. And Firewatch isn't just being a bummer, I feel like it's calling out that line of thinking specifically, confronting the player with that idea.
Making them think, Why would they do this to me? And then later, hopefully, when the betrayal dies down, maybe more thoughtful, why would they do this to me?
The protagonist is seeking an escapist experience, an adventure away from the stress and sadness of his regular life. And we gamers do the same thing, and we have certain expectations to be fulfilled. We expect games to basically be on our side with that escapist mission. And unlike movies or books, video games are far more skill-based and reward-based in nature. I'm reminded of this old clip from stand-up Dara O'Brien.
Video games do a thing that no other industry does. You cannot be bad at watching a movie. You cannot be bad at listening to an album. But you can be bad at playing a video game, and the video game will punish you and deny you access to the rest of the video game. No other art form does this. You've never been reading a book, and 3 chapters in, the book has gone, what are the major themes of the book so far? And you've gone, well, I don't know what. For fuck's sakes!
A book or movie or even a painting or a sculpture isn't really beholden to the same type of entertainment standards as a video game is. So not only have some loud gamers been very pissed off about walking simulators not being real video games because they don't present any skill-based challenges.
I hated the game!
But also, at the same time, having a game end without a reward, even without much challenge presented, like Firewatch, is still a big rug pulled out from under you because that's not the established transactional relationship we normally have with video games. That's not what games are supposed to do or be. We're not used to engaging with it in that way, for it to potentially offer us nothing.
And unless you're an art goblin like me, who enjoys finding value in strange and bizarre stuff, you're probably gonna feel a little bit angry about that betrayal. Meanwhile, I want more confrontational, weird, bummer art games. And it has been getting a lot better since Firewatch, don't get me wrong.
I love the Beginner's Guide, for example. Great game. Made me think, made me cry.
Made gamers angry and confused. They thought the story wasn't fictional for some reason, and that was kind of strange and sad.
And it doesn't really help that we all live in an internet hellscape of misinformation, outrage, and wildly polarized opinions, and that can make creating art and games more risky than it probably ought to be. It makes me wonder how many potential game devs just didn't bother making anything because the drama and the stress just wouldn't be worth it.
You're probably wondering if I think the developers of Firewatch specifically intended this read of the game that I'm pitching to you. And they probably didn't. I'm not ride or die on this opinion. It's just, fun thing to think about. I like it.
Ooh, that's a pretty drink.
That's a party drink. It's gonna get.
That's a party drink.
It's gonna get chroma keyed and look like the beauties of Firewatch.
But here's the big question, and here's where a lot of the interpretation stuff comes in, the stuff that I mentioned at the very start of the video.
Are we owed a satisfying ending? That's what I almost titled this episode, but I thought it was a little too clickbaity and rude, so I didn't go for it. And also the answer to that question is as unsatisfying as Firewatch's ending. It depends. Are video games toys? Are video games art? It depends. It's all perception, you know? If this is art and jumping rope and other stuff like that are games, then what is art and what is a game?
We even gamify things that aren't fun to trick ourselves into doing them. Is the Your Internet is Down T-Rex jumping game a game? And despite burying it in the desert, we still call E.T. a game, even though it's wretchedly broken and horrifically unfun. Is it just because it came out on the Atari that it is a game? And of course, many called Firewatch not a game, despite it being on a computer, being interactable, and also being charming and beautiful and definitely functional performance-wise. Your results may vary. Please do not be pedantic about this because you had some screen tearing or slowdown somewhere in there. I mean, hell, in that recent Apple versus Fortnite case, the judge had to try their hand at defining what a video game is. Something that, quote, no one agrees on, and neither side introduced evidence of any commonly accepted industry definition. And the best the judge could come up with was this. Games appear to require some level of interactivity or involvement between the player and the medium, some level of a command or choice which is then reflected in the game itself. This gaming definition contrasts to other forms of entertainment which are often passive forms enjoyed by consumers, films, TV, music. Video games are also generally graphically rendered or animated, as opposed to being recorded live or via motion capture as in films and television. Notice the careful wording with often and generally, because even the judge knows that there's exceptions to this definition. For example, is the Black Mirror episode Bandersnatch a game? Is a choose-your-own-adventure book a game? And full-motion video games are also nearly left outside of this definition due to being live-action recordings.
I don't know what I'm gonna do. Now I gotta go get a fucking pizza.
We pretend that we can define these things in an objective way, and yet it's kind of impossible. And indeed, lots of things are exactly like this.
Back in ye old Assassin's Creed Odyssey times, Plato jokingly described a human as a featherless biped, to which Diogenes, the filthy masturbating troll, brought the dude a plucked chicken and basically went, "Oh word, here's your man, dipshit."
Here you go, I made the world's worst YouTube thumbnail for you. Would Diogenes have liked Firewatch? Enjoy. Anyway, when you think about it, semantics is the real final boss of video games. That should have been the title. That would have made people mad. Can you tell I've never taken a philosophy class in my entire life? This brain is for video games and art goblinry, not book learning.
Anyway, back to Firewatch. Something I haven't mentioned about it yet is what the plot actually is. A kid died. He was dragged out into the woods by his dad, Ned, who wasn't coping with his own wartime PTSD very well, and Brian died in a climbing accident, an activity he tried to get out of but his dad was insistent on. Racked with guilt and fearful that Henry and Delilah might discover the corpse of his son, Ned desperately tried to scare them away, creatively using nearby scientific equipment and very successfully gaslighting the two. When you find Brian's hideaway from his overbearing father, it's a treasure trove of escapism. Off-brand D&D, off-brand Game Boy, little projects and toys. He was building this little castle sanctuary. I doubt it's a thematic accident that Brian's world of escapism consists of these typical nerd hobbies. The developers know their audience in this way, and by extension, I like to think that they might know how to incite them into hopefully having some art thoughts. But instead they just got mad. That sucks. Firewatch knows that games have value as escapist entertainment. It's not saying otherwise, which I feel like a lot of people misinterpreted it to say that. Hence why there's even a Game Boy alike in this boy cave. And its ending poses that the opposite is possible as well. Can't games also have value as non-escapist entertainment?
You really wanted me to stay.
I did, and now I'm...
Disappointed.
yeah.
I know.
I don't really know how to end this video, especially after all that irritating talk about semantics, so I'm gonna end on kind of an anecdote. A negative review I remember seeing here and there about Firewatch was basically this.
Don't make a game. Make a movie or write a book. Or do a radio play.
The gameplay
Or do a stage play.
is in the exploration.
That's not gameplay.
That's gameplay.
That's walking around.
And it wasn't just Rich Evans that was saying this. This was an opinion that I've seen just kind of floating around since Firewatch was released, basically. But it really stuck with me because it kind of begs the question, why are those types of media allowed to do this sort of thing, but games aren't?
Part of it probably has something to do with the idea that games need some appropriate level of interactivity, whatever that arbitrary amount is. But really, I think the core of this comment lies in the belief that plays, movies, books, and so forth are more appropriate for Firewatch's story because the story isn't fun. Sure, there's fun and dumb plays, movies, and books, but you can more easily tell what you're getting into just by the cover, or the back cover, or the trailer.
art with a capital A is often defined by its inaccessibility. Unfortunately.
That's why it's so often hidden away in the private collections of money-laundering millionaires, or in boring old museums behind glass and stanchions, or playing in art theaters and not your local chain cinema. That inaccessibility is fine by rich jerks who want the prestige of having something the proles don't. But some proles, people with the aforementioned anything but a game opinion, are totally fine with this divide too, because it's easy to sour grapes the whole thing. Nah, I don't want that highfalutin, pretentious garbage anyway. Let those dipshit elitists have their capital A art.
Game!
But games are a powerful medium because they're so accessible.
Almost anyone with a half-decent computer, an internet connection, and 20 or so bucks can access games far easier than they can access weird films or a Broadway show, which are often only available via piracy anyway. Games are so accessible that audiences can and often do accidentally play an artsy game. This is far easier to do than to accidentally stumble into the abstract art wing of the MoMA and see whatever this is. What is that? I love it.
I think the devs of Firewatch didn't make it a play or a movie because not only did they simply not want to make a play or a movie, but also because more people would play their game eternally up on Steam than would see, a weird play in an art house theater that runs for 2 weeks in one city. Nobody would see that. It's on Steam. We can all see this thing. They wanted people to see this shit. That's cool as hell. This is accessible to everyone.
Okay, let's wrap this up for real. The implication here with the comment, "this should have been something that isn't a game," is sad. Either games themselves are not suited for art stuff, or gamers themselves are not suited for art stuff.
Well, either way, that is far more disappointing to me than the end of Firewatch. And I guess I'll turn in now. Thanks for the good conversation. It's always nice on nights like this to have a big, long conversation about art. But it's late, I'm gonna turn in, so. We'll do this again sometime soon, maybe next month, maybe not. October's busy, watching them fires, but good night.